So we were invited to a special screening of Smile 2. And Smile 1 is a film we both loved. And,
Yes.
you know, it made perfect sense with as much money and as much hype as there was behind the first one that there was going to be a sequel. But of course, the question always becomes, is it needed, right? Are we just forcing another one because the first one did well? So let's talk about it. Does this warrant its existence? So Parker Finn returns, which is always a good sign when the director comes back. Typically when they just throw some random genre director at it, that's like, here, just make a sequel for the quick buck.
Yeah.
That always gets me worried. But when he returned, I was like, okay, we might actually have something here. And then after we had seen the first trailer, I was like, oh, I love this idea already. Because instead of taking the everyman or the everywoman, elevating that to a pop star made all the sense in the world to me. That's how you elevate the story and you tell a completely different type of story, even if you use the same framework. I just thought it was a really, really clever idea. And I was like, okay, I pretty much think I know how this is all going to go right after I'd seen the trailer. And I was right, but that's fine. I don't care about any of that. It's the presentation. It's how it's done. That's all that matters to me. So Naomi Scott stars here, who I think I've seen her in a few things. The thing I've known her best from is Aladdin, the remake, the live action remake. And I was like, that's a perfect cast there because not only can she act, but she can really sing. And of course, she's supposed to be a pop star. So we follow this pop star, Sky Riley, who, of course, if you saw the first one, you have to witness a death of someone who is infected with the Smile entity, which I learned is the name of the creature from the raffle trivia that was being held in our theater. That's its official name, I guess. You win a shirt if you knew that. I did not. But anyway, so if you were witness to this, you get infected, and then for the next 4 to 7 days, your life is fucking hell. So if you saw the first one, it's a very similar type of setup, but their lives could not be different, more different, right?
Yes.
So right out the gate, this is going to be a really tough year for performances. We kind of do those end of the year lists, and then we like to throw on the extra little awards for like best performance, best whatever. There's a lot of great performances this year, and this is just yet another.
Yes.
Naomi Scott is phenomenal in this film, and she carries such a large portion of the film. This is like the first film, this is such a intimate character study.
Yes.
And if you really like the first movie, if you love the first film like we do, and you kind of want to see more of that, but with a new character and elevated, then I think you'll love this. If you're someone who's like, first one's kind of shit to me or whatever, then I don't think you'll care for this one at all. But I think this is a fantastic follow-up and a sequel that really solidifies itself on its own 2 feet as like a worthy successor.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that her performance is definitely one of the highlights of the film. I really like I feel like the pop star like aspect is really embraced in this movie. There's a lot of different elements, whether it's like choreography or time on stage or just like the life of a super famous person and having everybody around you kind of wanting something from you and not really caring that much about you as a person. That's a big part of the the film and the story. So I really like all of that. I think that it, as you had already said, like it is a perfect follow-up to the first film in terms of making it like a bigger problem to deal with, so to speak. And obviously getting a totally different character means that it'll be even more interesting, because if it had been just another like average Joe, I mean, it still could have been interesting, but this is just like, it's not a rinse lather repeat at the same of the first film. So I think that that's very exciting. And yeah, there's some really creepy imagery in this. I think if you were creeped out and scared by the first one, there's definitely some moments in this that I think rival the scary times in the first film. And some pretty good gore too. Nothing, you know, nothing like Terrifier 3 level or anything as like a comparison, but still some good stuff for sure. Yeah, I definitely, there's one scene in particular that is like very scary to me that I think will kind of be burned into some people's brains, like mine.
Yeah.
So I can't say what, but it's towards the end of the film, and you will know it when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, much like the first film, this film deals very heavily with trauma.
Yes.
And I actually prefer the exploration of trauma here and the character that it's being used through. I think that the way Naomi is able to sell us on her past trauma, her present trauma, and all, you know, all of that, I think is just so well handled. And she is just so damn good in the film as this recovering pop star whose life is falling apart around her, and then something, you know, you always think you have it bad until, you know, something comes along that's so much worse, and she'd be begging for her old life back after having dealt with this. And I feel like this one does up the ante, because whereas in the first one I felt like maybe there was some hope, with this one, this just elevated it to a level where I was like, I don't even know if this thing's fucking beatable.
Yeah.
You know, and you feel very hopeless through this. But her character is very strong-willed, and I really loved that. She has a big moment in the last act that I really liked a lot from her. So a lot of this just has to deal with like how much I really enjoy her. So like if you're not vibing with her, or if you're really not liking her and her character and her story, then man, yeah, this is going to be a slog to sit through for you, because this does come in at over 2 hours, and I see a lot of complaints just in the last few years about horror movies being longer than like an hour and a half. Like, it just seems like a general consensus from a lot of people is they want their horror movies to be a lean 80 to 90 minutes at most, and most films don't justify a longer runtime. I wouldn't cut a single thing out of this movie. So, do I think it justifies its 2 hour and like 7 minute, 2 hour and something minute runtime? Yes, I do. I don't see any reason to cut any of this stuff. I think it's all important, and the exploration of the trauma is really my favorite part. As far as the scares and the horror goes, yeah, it's good. It's mostly like jump scary.
There's a lot of jump scares.
But they definitely have good visuals,
yes,
too. There's a lot of good visual gags and payoffs to that will sear themselves into your mind. But, you know, if you're somebody who loves a lot of like jump scares, there's a lot of audiences that are looking for those like big bombastic like scream moments. There's a lot of them here, so I think you'll get your fix there. But also, if you want like a character study and a story that really benefits from a little longer format and an exploration of a character, then I think that you'll be satisfied there too. So I think it's got a very well-rounded package to it, and I think it's a great follow-up. So yeah, I was very happy that this one worked out, because, you know, I liked the first one so much. I was such a huge fan of it. It was probably my top 3 or something of 2 years ago, and it was like, man, I really hope this lands. When you have a film you love, you always want that sequel to not disappoint you, because then it's like a stain on the, you know, it's not really like a franchise yet, but technically it's a franchise. But I'm just very happy to report back, for myself at least, and for you, that we love this. So that's exciting. And if they want to make a 3, I'm definitely down.
I would totally watch a third one. I think that there's an opportunity to definitely do so.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, and I definitely see this as being like a very and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like a crowd pleaser. I think that, like you were saying with like the jump scares, I think there's a lot that maybe mainstream horror like audiences will really vibe with, and then I think that there is some deeper stuff about trauma that was explored in the first one that continues to be explored in this one, that will satisfy people who are like, you know, like to be a little bit maybe more introspective with their movies, but also just as like a popcorn, like, you know, scary film. I think it really works very, very well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was a huge success. Right now, it's definitely hard to stack up, but I kind of still lean a little bit towards the original, like the first one being maybe more favorited by me. But I would need to watch that one and then watch this one again, I feel, to get like a really good, like, you know, idea of how they compare to each other in my mind. But this one is like, there's a lot in this one that's really fantastic. So it's hard.
It's always difficult to go up against the first one because the first one is what introduces you to the material, and the second one is just kind of rehashing a lot of it, so you already kind of know what to expect going into this, and then you kind of got to relive it in a way that you already have. So that is always what kind of hurts a sequel to a degree, because there's not a freshness to the story, especially one like this that has a pretty basic premise, and it's very hard to change all that much about it without sticking to like the original lore, right? Like there's only so much you can step your toes outside of what is set up in the first movie. It's a very, very basic gimmick, right? So there's only so much you can do. And then so there is a rehashing of ideas here, but I think it justifies itself well enough, and it's strong enough on its own. So, but yeah, you know, we saw this in theaters with a bunch of other reviewers.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got to talk to them and talk to a few people about their thoughts on it as well. And everyone seemed very pleased, even people who were like, I didn't like the first one as much. I thought it was overhyped. I thought this one was better.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think I'd like this one. I didn't think this was necessary, but man, I really loved it. So for the naysayers and for the people who loved it, you know, we're two different perspectives there. It seems to be, to be from that crowd that we were around, everyone seemed to be pretty damn into it.
Yes, yeah.
There wasn't a lot of naysaying. Everyone was really into the movie. Way more reactions to this movie than there was to Terrifier 3.
Yeah, very odd. There was a lot more. Not a lot. Well, yeah, a lot more, because there was none in our Terrifier 3.
People were screaming. People were laughing. People were like, you know, wincing and being like, oh, you know. We had a lot of reactions in the crowd, which is great.
Yes, definitely.
I know that seems very weird to people in the UK or something who they're like, we don't talk, we don't laugh, we don't scream, we just sit there. And then if anybody makes a noise, we tell them to shut the fuck up. I don't know. That was weird. We got a bunch of comments like that from people being like, I think it's very weird that you worry about a crowd's reaction to a movie. Yeah, like when you go to see a comedy, when people are laughing, you're having more fun laughing along with them. Is this fucking bizarre to people? Anyway, all right. So yeah, Smile 2 in theaters on Thursday, which will be tomorrow for you guys. Yeah. So when we get to release this. All right. We'll see you in the comments. Adios.
Bye.